So before I get started this morning, I want to take just a minute and say thanks to some important people in our life together. I want to say thanks to the incredible team of staff that we have here at Christ Church. You all probably don't know just how much this team of people does behind the scenes of our life together. We get together on Sunday morning and we celebrate, and everything works like it's a nice, well-oiled machine, and you don't realize the amount of work that goes into making all of that happen and all of the other dimensions of our life together through the course of the week. So I just want to say thanks to our incredible team of staff that are part of our life together. You have no real, well, maybe you do, I shouldn't say that. You need to know how much this senior leader appreciates the fact that he can step away for 2 weeks and know that everything is just beautifully cared for and things keep on going without any type of glitch at all. So I just want to say thanks to our staff. I want to say thanks to our amazing group of leaders, of lay leaders. Elaine Young leads a group of folk that are just rather remarkable in their willingness to give of themselves to help make ministry happen. So I just want to say thanks to all of you that serve here at Christ Church in any way. Sometimes you don't realize that when you give of yourself that way, it does make a difference. It does make a difference. Sometimes you don't always see it in front of you, but it does make a difference. It enables us to be the church that we are becoming. I got to tell you that when a person graduates from seminary, they hope at some point in their career that they will have the opportunity to serve a church like this, where folks just jump in and make it happen, whether they're there or whether they're not. Everett Hammond, you remember Everett Hammond? Everett Hammond said to me once, "Your job is to work yourself out of one." Yeah, that's exactly right. Our job is to work ourselves out of a job so that the people of God are deployed and empowered and impassioned to be the people that God has called them to be. I've been thinking about this journey of ministry that I've been on in these 30-some years, and the journey of ministry has allowed me to go to some rather remarkable places. For example, I've had the opportunity to stand with my family before the pyramids in Egypt. I've had the opportunity in this journey of ministry to officiate at the wedding of my son. I've had the opportunity to stand at the top of the Mount of Beatitudes above the Sea of Galilee with some pretty cool people. I've had the chance to stand in the Jordan River and help Gwen Hill and some others remember their baptism and be thankful. I've had the opportunity to stand hand in hand with a couple of really fine gentlemen. One I get to work with every day. Thank you for being faithful last Sunday. Both of you, thank you for being faithful last Sunday. And then I had the chance to stand right out here in the narthex of our church, shoulder to shoulder with one of my childhood heroes. This guy has 4 Super Bowl rings. This is John Kolb. Had the opportunity at annual conference this year to stand with my arm around Louise Kupchak, whose husband baptized me when I was a baby. I've had the opportunity to be in some rather remarkable places. And then I've had some opportunities to be in places that I didn't quite expect. I never quite expected to get slimed when I got out of seminary. Nor did I expect that one day my daughter would be applying nail polish and makeup so that I'd look like this. And just yesterday, I could not have ever expected to be at a spot where I look like that. It's been an incredible journey, and it has taught me a couple of things. It's taught me that, first of all, life is filled with moments of awe and wonder and thanksgiving. Would you agree? And then life is filled with moments that bring you stuff that you just did not expect. at all. Agreed? Would you agree that in your life you've had moments of incredible awe and wonder, like standing in front of the pyramids? Moments of awe and wonder. Maybe it hasn't been that particular one, but some others. And would you say that your life has turned out exactly the way you planned it? Okay, you got to think about that one a little bit, don't you? Huh? Life has brought unexpected things your way, has it not? So I want to spend a little time this morning with a story in the Scriptures about a guy who had some experiences of awe and wonder, and right on the heels of that experience was something that he didn't expect. So I would like you to turn in your Bibles to Matthew chapter 14. If you need to use the Pew Bibles, it's page 729. I want us to share an experience in the life of a guy named Peter. Now, as you're turning there, let me set this story up a little bit for you. Jesus and his disciples are just on the heels of a major miracle. Jesus has just fed 5,000 people. Now, that's not abnormal to feed that number of people. What's abnormal about it is what he used to do it. A few fish and a few loaves of bread. Right before that, Jesus had been teaching this enormous crowd of people that had tracked him down after he withdrew into the hillsides to pray by himself. He discovered that his cousin, John the Baptist, had been arrested. And he pulls away to pray. But the crowds track him down. And he spends the day healing and teaching. And as the day gets toward evening, the disciples recognize that this group of people are getting hungry. And so they come to Jesus and they say, we need to dismiss these folks so they can go and buy something to eat. Jesus says, I want you to feed them. And the disciples look at Jesus and say, it's just impossible. All we have is a few fish and a few loaves of bread. Jesus says, bring them to me. Jesus blesses them, distributes them. Everybody eats their fill. 12 baskets full of leftovers are gathered up at the end. Would you say that that would be something somewhat unexpected for the disciples? A moment of awe and wonder, wow, and a moment that's kind of unexpected as well. What's unexpected about it? Well, a few fish and a few loaves don't feed 5,000 plus people. That's normal thinking, is that it's just not normal to feed that number of people with that meager resources. So as that event concludes, Jesus decides it's time to spend a little more time in prayer, and he sends his disciples from where he is across the Sea of Galilee. So let's pick up the story now. This is Matthew 14, verse 22. Would you stand as an act of worship and reverence for the reading of the Word of God? Immediately, Jesus made the disciples get into the boat and go on ahead of him to the other side while he dismissed the crowd. After he had dismissed them, he went up into the hills by himself to pray. When evening came, he was there alone. But the boat was already a considerable distance from land, buffeted by the waves because the wind was against it. During the fourth watch of the night, somewhere between 3 and 6 in the morning, during the fourth watch of the night, Jesus went out to them walking on the lake. When the disciples saw him walking on the lake, they were terrified. It's a ghost, they said, and cried out in fear. But Jesus immediately said to them, take courage, it is I, don't be afraid. Lord, if it's you, Peter answered, tell me to come to you on the water. Come ahead, he said. Then Peter got down out of the boat and walked on the water to Jesus. But when he saw the wind, he was afraid, and beginning to sink, he cried out, Lord, save me. Immediately Jesus reached out his hand and caught him. You of little faith, he said, why did you doubt? And when they climbed into the boat, the wind died down. Then those who were in the boat with him worshiped him, saying, truly, you are the Son of God. Sisters and brothers, the word of God for the people of God. Together we say, thanks be to God. You may be seated. So let me ask you a question. Would you say that the disciples' reaction to Jesus walking on the water would be fairly close to a normal one. Think about it. You and I don't tend to see people walking on water. The normal part of us says in response to something like that, that's not normal. People can't walk on water. Why? Because when people try, but not Jesus. In the middle of this storm, Jesus Christ comes walking to the disciples on top of the water. And it is as natural, as normal as possibly could be for them to respond by saying, "That's a ghost." Now, how normal is it to believe in ghosts? I suppose it depends on which television show you watch. But think about it for a moment. In this particular culture, a way to describe the abnormal is to give some credence to something you wouldn't give credence to otherwise. So the only explanation that the disciples have for the fact that there is a man walking on top of the water is that it's a spirit, that it's a ghost, and they are terrified. But all of a sudden, the Spirit speaks, and the Spirit says to those in the boat, "It is me. Don't be afraid." They recognize the voice. The voice, the presence on the water, invites those in the boat to consider that there's something beyond the normal happening here. There's something that's unexplainable going on here, except that very possibly God is at work. And so Peter, speaking, I think, for all of the disciples in the boat, says, "I tell you what, if it's really you, then tell me to come to you." So think about this for a minute. Peter is willing to take a swim if his hunch is wrong. He's willing to take a swim. If it's you, Jesus, tell me to come to you walking on the water like you are. And Jesus says, "Come on ahead." And so Peter steps out of the boat. Eugene Peterson in the Message, by the way, says it this way: Peter jumped out of the boat. Now let that image sink in a minute. It's one thing, is it not, to step out of the boat. How many of you always put your toe in the water before you jump in? Huh? You know what I mean? You kind of test it to see if it's okay. So it's one thing to take your leg and throw it over the side of the boat and test the water to see if it's all right. It's an entirely different matter to put your hands up on the gunwale and just throw yourself over and trust that the one who says come is who you think he is. One way or the other, Peter gets out of the boat and he walks. Lo and behold, he walks. He walks across the water. And can you put yourself in his shoes a minute? Can you put yourself in the shoes that you are doing something that is completely not normal? You are walking on water. You are not sinking. If in fact you did jump out of the boat, you have hit the water as though you were hitting concrete. You hit the water and you're standing straight. Wow. You are experiencing something beyond what you know to be normal. And as you walk a little further, suddenly the magnitude of what you're doing gets a hold of you. Now, wait a minute. As you're walking along, this is not normal. I shouldn't be doing this. I shouldn't be able to walk across this spot like I walk the trails on the hillsides of Galilee. I shouldn't be able to do this. And doubt begins to creep in, and all of a sudden you feel the waves lapping not at your ankles but at your knees. You get the image? And you begin to be afraid. and you cry out, I'm going down in the midst of this storm. And the minute you cry out, Eugene Peterson says, immediately, right on the moment, just then, Jesus reaches out and grabs a hold of your hand and pulls you up and looks at you and says, why'd you doubt? And you become aware that this man, this Jesus Christ, is God in the flesh, inviting you to think beyond what you've allowed yourself to understand as normal. Are you with me this morning? That's the heart of the story with Peter. That God is inviting Peter to see that with God in life, with Jesus active in the power of the Spirit in one's life, normal gets to be redefined. That all of a sudden what we think is right, what we think is normal, what we think is the boundaries of how God operates in life, all of a sudden Jesus comes walking to us across the water and says, God is not bound by our normals. To quote a friend of mine sitting in this sanctuary with a blue shirt on, whoo! Now, let that sink in for you for a minute. What if the real heart of this story was an invitation for you and for me to let Jesus Christ redefine normal for us? What if a possible outcome of this story was the invitation from God to each one of us right where we are, to allow God to take us beyond what we have understood to be normal? What if we could come to believe that God is able, as the scripture says, to do far more abundantly than we could ask or think or imagine? What if the invitation of Peter walking on the water was to you and to me, let God redefine normal for you? Now, I don't know exactly how that connects to where you're living this morning, but I invite you to draw the line. I invite you to draw the line between that truth, that Jesus Christ is not bound by our definitions of normal. Let that truth connect to where you're living this morning. That in all of the places that you think nothing will ever change, Jesus Christ says to you and to me, let me redefine your normal. And all of the places in your life where you wonder, how are we going to get beyond this? I do not see a way forward in this challenge of my life or that challenge of my life. There is absolutely no way that I can see a way. What if you let Jesus Christ speak to your life this morning and say to you, let me redefine your normal? What if in the places of your life where the circumstance or the situation has come to you out of the blue, it's just showed up and you've gone, what? Anybody in that place this morning? What? Maybe in those places where you look at that and you're trying to make sense of what to do about it. Because how many of you know that you and I are managers by heart? You out there? How many of you know that you and I, when stuff comes to us, we immediately want to try to manipulate it, control it, fix it, make it better, make it different? You with me? That tends to be who we are. What if when those times came, you heard Jesus Christ say to you and to me, let me redefine normal for you? What if in all the places of pain in your life, the places where it hurts, the places where you just wonder, how possibly could it hurt any worse? How possibly can it not hurt at all? What if in those places, You just heard Jesus say, let me redefine normal. Because sisters and brothers, we serve this God who is not bound by the things we call normal. We serve this God who walks on water. Let that sink in. We serve this God who says to a person, come on ahead, and he jumps over the side and instead of sinking, jumps onto concrete and stands tall and walks toward the one that's calling him. That's the God we serve. And sisters and brothers, if God can make Peter walk on water, guess who else he can make walk on water? Guess who else? Now, there are some ways that I think you and I need to respond to this God, because I wish it were as simple as me being able to say to you, in all of the struggle places of your life, listen for the God who says, let me redefine normal. I wish it was as easy for me to be able to say, find that switch in your life and turn it on. I wish it was that easy. How many of you know it's not? How many of you would have thrown that switch a long time ago if you could have? So what do we need to do? What are some suggestions? The Lord kind of shared with me 3 ideas, 3 images this week to try to help us respond to this Jesus who is redefining our normal. Here's the first one. I think Jesus invites us to have the courage to accept and act on the invitation. What's that mean? It means that first of all, we have to believe. First of all, we have to take the step of belief. We have to do what Peter did, put his hand on the gunwales of the boat. And whether he gently threw his leg over to test the water or whether he just jumped over with all that he had, we have to take that moment. We have to get to that spot where we choose to accept the invitation and act on it and believe. I've been thinking this week about a seamstress who is a member of the Dexter Avenue Baptist Church. One time in December of 1955, this seamstress was sitting in a seat on a bus and was asked to move to the back of the bus because a white person needed a seat. And that morning, this seamstress chose to act and accept the challenge from God that what she'd come to accept as normal was not right. And she allowed Jesus Christ to redefine normal for her that moment when she said, no. And that next Monday, 10,000 people gathered at her church to pray about what to do next. And that one moment when she accepted the invitation that Jesus gave to her to imagine a redefinition of normal, when she accepted that, can I suggest to you that the world was changed? Our church was changed. Our nation was changed. And the unfortunate reality of Charlottesville, Virginia, is that our nation is still changing. In fact, it must change. If for no other reason than a woman who in December of 1955 said, I accept your invitation, Jesus, redefine normal. She can't have acted for nothing. So one of the things you and I need to do in all the places of our lives where we have come to understand and accept normal, we've got to be willing to let Jesus redefine it. We have to have the courage to accept it and act on it. Then we have to have some trust, do we not, in the one that's always there no matter what. Did you catch it? Whether you're reading a Message, whether you're reading the NIV, it doesn't matter. When Peter starts to sink, what does it say? Jesus is immediately there. Now let me ask you for a minute. If Minda in the back row, stick up your hand, Minda. Okay, see her back there? Oh, turn around. You can move. This is to wake you up. Okay, turn around. See Minda back there? If Minda were in need, If she had a need back there, what would be more helpful to her? Me getting back to her, or Elaine that's sitting in back of her stepping up to give her aid? Why? See, the heart of the story is that Jesus is not just saying, come to me. Jesus is right there, involved in the moment, saying to Peter when he starts to sink, I'm here. Don't doubt. We can do this together. We have to have courage to accept and act on the invitation to let Jesus redefine normal. We need to take that step of trust in the one that's always there no matter what. And then now here's the tricky one. We have to have patience. Okay, I'm done. We have to have patience as the revelation of God at work becomes visible. How many of you know that just because you're not seeing God working doesn't mean God's not working? You get that? Just because you're not seeing it doesn't mean God isn't at work. So part of what I pray for every day is patience to let me see what God is doing. Don't let me walk ahead of you. Don't let me run ahead of you. Let me just be there when you reveal yourself. What do you think of this picture? A couple of us went to a seminar in Erie this past week. It was a downlink from Willow Creek Church in Chicago. And Bill Hybels used a picture that was similar to this. I've been trying for 2 days to find the exact picture he used. I can't find it. This is as close as I can get. What do you see in this picture? Okay, you see hands. How many? Two. One is small, one is large. Okay, the large one is where in proximity to the small one? Around it. You see that? It's around it. It's holding on to it. If you could see this a little closer, what do you see at the very tips of the small fingers? If you could see it a little closer, you'd be able to see that the tips of those fingers are white. What's that tell you? The big hand is holding on tight enough for there to be security. The little hand is holding on for dear life. Here's the good news. When Jesus Christ redefines normal for you and for me, that's how he does it. He reminds you, I'll take you places beyond what you've come to understand as normal, but I will always have your hand in mine. Hold on tight. Wes Selger is an Episcopal priest. He tells the story one time about going to a motorcycle shop to buy a new Harley. He says he walked in and was looking at this great machine, and the salesperson came up to him and said, "Oh, this thing roars and it rumbles, and it'll make all of the girls look at you and go, wow." And then the salesman said, "What do you do for a living?" And Wes said, "I'm a minister." And the salesman said, "This machine gets very good gas mileage." Wes makes the comment about, now those comments about efficiency and about mileage and things like that, you would expect to hear that if you were buying a lawnmower. But not if you're buying a Harley. If you're buying a Harley, you want vroom, and you want chrome, and you want glitz, and you want flash, and you want to be able to climb on it and look bad. Wes preached about this once, and here's what he said. I wonder, is our church more of a motorcycle or a lawnmower? And then he pushed it a little more. Is your relationship with Jesus more like a lawnmower? Safe, predictable, functional? Or is it more like a Harley that just says, let's go? Hang on for the ride. What about us? What about you? Here's the truth, sisters and brothers. Charlottesville, Virginia, pay attention. Charlottesville, Virginia will not be changed by lawnmowers. The situation there will change by folk who are willing to jump on the Harley, put their hand in the hand of God, hold on tight and say, take us, redefine our normal so that your kingdom, God, will come. Let us pray.